Around the world, myths were born to explain the unexplainable, and sometimes just to give people nightmares. Gods, monsters, curses, bizarre and terrifying creatures that defy all logic. Today, we're diving into some of the strangest monsters from mythologies you've probably never even heard of. And the deeper we go, the weirder it gets. Layer 1. Kalupalik, Inuit, Arctic. Imagine being alone at the edge of an ice sheet, in the absolute silence of the Arctic, and hearing a hum, almost a song, a high-pitched, distant, hypnotic sound. If you follow that sound, you might catch only a silhouette submerging into the freezing waters. And then, it's over. The Kalupalik is described as a half-human, half-fish creature, with greenish skin and unnaturally long fingernails. She lives in the frozen depths and has one clear target: children, especially those who wander too close to the ice or shore, too curious for their own good. Wearing a traditional hooded cloak with a pouch on her back, she literally kidnaps little humans and takes them away. Where to? No one knows. They say that those who hear her song are never seen again. The horror here doesn't come from a direct attack, but from absence, from disappearance. In a land where silence is already oppressive, knowing it might be alive and watching you is a thought colder than the ocean itself. Bukovac, Serbia and Croatia. While the Kalupalik rules in cold and silence, the Bukovac is pure noise and chaos, an amphibious monster from the swamps of the former Yugoslavia, known for its grotesque and utterly unnatural appearance. 6 legs, 2 horns, and skin so damp it seems to have just crawled out of something that shouldn't even exist. It appears at night, emerging from lakes, always accompanied by a deafening sound, a guttural, distorted roar. One of the names given to it literally means the one who screams, and that's no coincidence. Those who hear it scream say it comes from all directions, and by the time they locate the source, they're already tangled in the monster's 6 legs. That's when everything fades to black. The creature doesn't bother to hunt. It waits for you to come, lured by the sound, like a trap left wide open. And if you're in a nearby village, it's even worse. They say the Bukovac strangles its prey and drags the remains to the bottom of the lake. Nothing floats afterward. Yaramaihahu, Aboriginal Australian. The Australian forest hides a creature that sounds like a joke until you hear how it operates. The Yaramaihahu is less than 5 feet tall, with red skin, an oversized head, and no teeth. Instead, it has suction cups on its hands and feet, like a cross between a human and a deformed frog. It lives at the top of fig trees and waits. Simply waits for someone to rest in the shade. When that happens, it drops from above, and the process begins. First, the suction cups drain some of the blood. Then, it swallows the victim whole, but it doesn't end there. It regurgitates the person shortly after, still alive, but a little different, a little smaller, a little less human. If this happens 2 or 3 times, the person is no longer a person. They become a new Yaramaihahu. In other words, the monster doesn't kill. It converts, slowly, in cycles, and you feel every part of the process. They say there are places in the forest where screams echo at night, screams that don't sound human, but once were. Ahuizotl, Aztec. Among the murky waters of the rivers in the old Aztec Empire lived a creature that struck fear even into the most trained warriors. The Ahuizotl looks, at first glance, like a canine animal, but the detail that shatters any sense of logic is its tail, or rather the hand at the tip of its tail, a real hand, with fingers, and it is more skillful than any fisherman. The creature hides beneath the surface and mimics a disturbing sound, the cry of a baby. Anyone who hears it and tries to help gets close to the riverbank. Then, without warning, they're pulled underwater. The full body is never seen again. The Ahuizotl feeds on specific parts: eyes, fingernails, teeth, nothing else. The rest is left to rot in the shallows. The creepiest part is that the Aztecs believed this being was sent by water gods, a sacred reaper. In other words, it wasn't just a monster, it was divine punishment, and no one, no matter how prepared, escaped being chosen. Sometimes, all it takes is the smell of rotten fish and the faint cry of a baby near the shore. to know it's already too late. Layer 2. Impundulu, Southern Africa. Lightning rips through the sky, and with the thunder, something screams, a sound too high-pitched to be human. The creature responsible is known as the Impundulu, the lightning bird. To many, it's just a tribal myth, until the thunder starts carrying blood. Visually, it appears as a bird the size of a human, with black and white feathers and eyes glowing with a cold light. Its beak? Sharp enough to slice through flesh like wet paper. But the most disturbing part is that the Impundulu doesn't act alone. It can take human form, usually that of a charming young man, and serves as a familiar to witches and sorcerers. This means it can live among us, take orders, attack on command. When it gets hungry, it demands blood. If not fed with animals, it turns on its master, and even that won't satisfy it for long. Oral histories speak of entire villages that heard its wings during a storm, only to wake up to ruined crops, dry wells, and their children gone. The thunder that night wasn't natural. Soglav, Slavic mythology. There is something that always haunts the graves in the Balkan mountains, a presence no one sees, but everyone feels. The Soglav is one of the most degenerate beings in Slavic mythology, a humanoid body, a single eye in the center of its forehead, and the head of a dog. Not a regular dog, one with metallic teeth, as if forged in darkness. The Soglav hides in caves near cemeteries or battlefields. Its obsession, corpses. It digs up remains, gnaws on bones, and drains the last energy from decaying tissue. But the dead alone aren't enough. Sometimes it tunnels up to the surface and searches for warm flesh. Its lone eye is like a dark flashlight. If it sees you, it will come for you. Some say that if you hear a dog growling beneath the earth, it's not a hallucination, it's a warning. The Soglav is digging. Papanijuwari, Tiwi, Australia. A heavy step, then another, then a sniffing sound, like a massive beast inhaling the forest itself. That's how the arrival of the Papanijuwari begins, the blind giant of the Tiwi. He cannot see, but he senses. He smells blood. He feels the heat of a feverish body. He senses the soul of someone about to depart. He roams at night, invisible or just barely a shadow. Some describe his silhouette as a colossal figure carrying a flaming torch. But the flame does not light the way. It marks the end. When he draws near, he drains the life from the sick and the dying, like a mosquito the size of a tree. And if there's no one weak enough, he waits, preferably at the edge of the bed. The most unsettling part is that he isn't shunned. He's feared as part of the natural order, a sort of reaper, but ravenous. Even today, many avoid saying his name after dark, just in case he picks up something coming from your direction. Chonchon, Mapuche, Chile. In the far south of the world, there are nights when the sky seems alive, but what flies up there isn't a bird, it's a head. The Chonchon is one of the darkest symbols in Mapuche folklore, a sorcerer, or rather, part of one, who, at nightfall, detaches his own head from his body. It comes alive. Winged ears sprout, flapping like bat wings. Its eyes glow red, and its mouth whispers something only the cursed can hear. Tue, 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 a warning, or a prophecy. If you hear that sound, it means someone close won't see the dawn. The Chonchon doesn't need a door. It slips through cracks, chimneys, slits in the wall. Sometimes, all that remains from its visit is a strange sensation, as if something sucked the air from your lungs while you slept. Other times, not even that, just emptiness. It is said that speaking its name may draw its attention, or worse, the attention of its master. Because yes, the Chonchon is created by witches, and if the sorcerer is discovered, they may vanish too, but not cleanly, not quietly, in a ritualistic way. Layer 3. Eloko, Congo. The Congo holds a forest so dense it seems to contain more than just trees and animals, and indeed it does. The Eloko, also known as the Boloko, are small creatures, but absolutely lethal. They dwell deep within the jungle, in clearings no one can ever reach, guarding their land with grotesque zeal. Visually, they resemble aged dwarfs with moss-like hair, razor-sharp claws, and expressions frozen somewhere between laughter and hatred. The sound that betrays them is that of tiny bells, a soft jingling that strangely invites, and that's the problem. The Iloko's bells don't request attention, they compel it. When someone hears them, something in the mind fractures. The person walks toward the source of the sound by their own will, even knowing it's wrong, even knowing it's the end. Tales speak of hunters vanishing without a trace, of women offering pieces of themselves, enchanted by a smiling Iloko at the door. No one returns from a conversation with one of them, because no one hears just the bell, they hear the call. Kishi, Angola. A charming smile, soft words, a gaze that captivates. That's how the Kishi begins. It is described as a charismatic, handsome man, and dangerous, but that's just the front, literally. Behind the human face, hidden under hair or robes, lies the true face, that of a ravenous hyena, a creature with jaws strong enough to snap bone with a single crunch. The Kishi uses beauty to lure, always women, sometimes just to deceive, other times to start a family. But this relationship has an expiration date, and it doesn't end in argument or heartbreak. It ends in screams, in absence, in the sense that someone left and never returned. Some tribes are known to avoid strangers who smile too much, because that smile might be just a distraction. The hyena doesn't see with its eyes, it senses with its nose, and if you're afraid, it will know. Stikini, Seminole, United States. In the humid heat of Florida, among swamps and woods, there exists a kind of creature that only reveals itself after sunset. By day, it's impossible to identify. It looks human, lives among humans, talks like one of us. But by night, it vomits out its own body. Yes, literally. It ejects its innards and what's left of its soul, and transforms. The result is the Stikini, a creature resembling a 6-foot-tall owl, with long claws, glowing eyes, and an insatiable instinct. The target? Human hearts. The method? Wait for the victim to fall asleep. Wait for the heartbeat to slow. And then, strike. They say it's silent, except for a wet crack when the claw pierces the chest. By morning, the creature returns, swallows its own insides again, and walks among villages as if nothing happened. Some stories tell of people who knew too much about the Stikini and disappeared soon after. Others claim it's dangerous to even say the name aloud. Strangely, everyone agrees on this. If you dream of an owl staring at you through the window, don't wake up, because if you do, you'll see it from the inside. Ads, West Africa. Perhaps the hardest monster to fight is the one no one sees. The Ads has no fixed shape. When it wants to hide, it becomes an insect, a mosquito, or a firefly. Something you'd swat without a second thought. But this is no ordinary mosquito. It passes through locked doors, cracks in the ceiling, the bars on your window, and once inside, it feeds. Not on blood, on something deeper. The Ads drains vitality, clarity, identity. Victims grow sick slowly, without explanation. They weaken, forget, fumble their words, and in some cases, begin to behave differently, as if they are someone else, as if they are possessed. In Yu tradition, there are cases where the Ads doesn't just consume, it settles in, and the person becomes something else, part human, part something not of this world. The most disturbing thing about the Ads is that sometimes it doesn't come from outside. Sometimes it's already in the house, in the next room, in the mirror. Layer 4. Penanggalan, Malaysia. Imagine walking through a sleeping village in Southeast Asia during a muggy early morning when you catch a strong scent of vinegar in the air. No wind, no sound, but something lingers, something that shouldn't exist outside a nightmare. The Penanggalan is an ordinary-looking woman by day, but at night, her body splits, literally. Her head detaches, tearing through the neck, and floats into the sky, with her internal organs dangling like withered roots. She flies in search of blood, but not just any blood, that of women in childbirth and newborns. The most repeated image in these stories is of a long-haired woman with an impossibly long tongue, hovering outside windows or sneaking through floorboards. The horror of the Penanggalan lies in contrast. The caretaker by day becomes the predator by night. To protect themselves, villagers place shards of glass on the Penanggalan's body, the hollow trunk she must return to by dawn. If her organs can't fit back inside, she dies. But if they do, she lives on as always, embedded and waiting for the next open window. Nachtseher, Germany. In Northern Europe, there exists a kind of creature that doesn't rise from the grave. It stays where it was buried, and still, it destroys. The Nachtseher is a strange vampire. It doesn't hunt. It consumes itself, and in doing so, it consumes the living. According to legend, it remains in the tomb, chewing its burial shroud, its own lips, or even its arm. And as it devours its body, the bond to its family unravels. Each bite erases a life, like a plague born from death, spreading among the living. If many from the same family died in quick succession, the old Germans knew a Nachtseher was active. To stop it, the corpse had to be exhumed, and a stone, sometimes a brick, placed in its mouth to block the act. But it wasn't always done in time. The most terrifying part is that the Nachtseher has no awareness, no plan, only hunger. A hunger that starts with a whisper in the grave and ends in an empty house, full of portraits, and no one left to remember the names. Baycock, Ojibwe, North America. In the frozen heart of the northern United States forests, the baycock hunts. It doesn't approach like a beast. It doesn't attack like an animal. It floats, thin to the bone, with translucent skin and eyes glowing like burning coal. It is a spirit, yet also matter, a mixed form of curse. Its targets aren't the weak, but the strong, warriors, hunters, protectors, those who sleep feeling safe because they know how to fight. The baycock is silent. It fires invisible arrows. They don't wound, they paralyze, and when the victim collapses, it approaches with its weapon, a spiritual club meant to cut more than flesh. They say the baycock opens the body and removes something from within, something that perhaps was never meant to leave. The most haunting aspect of these stories is that the victim never knows, sleeps, wakes up weakened, and dies days later. Because the baycock doesn't kill directly, it breaks from the inside, and no one ever sees it coming. Tupilak, Inuit, Greenland. At the northernmost edge of the earth, there are monsters not born, but built. The Tupilak is a handmade creature, literally, created by shamans who seek vengeance. It is assembled from animal bones, scraps of skin, sinew, and sometimes human remains. It is crafted in secret, anointed with spells, and in certain cases, with fluids unspoken aloud. Once ready, the shaman sends the Tupilak into the sea or into shadow, and it departs, without mercy. Its mission is to find and eliminate a specific enemy, and it does so slowly, supernaturally, inevitably. But there's one problem. If the target is spiritually protected, the Tupilak returns. And if it returns, it kills its own creator. That's why making a Tupilak is like signing a pact. One mistake, and you become the hunted. There are carvings made to represent Tupilaks as amulets, but they never capture the real essence, because the real essence cannot be carved in wood. It lives in stolen bones, in the silence of the seafloor, and in the mute scream of someone who knows that something small is coming. Layer 5. Lamashtu, Mesopotamia. Long before any other creature on this list, Lamashtu already existed. She is not merely a monster, she is a fallen goddess, an ancient force that has terrorized the world of the living since the dawn of civilization. With the head of a lion, donkey's ears, bird-like claws, and breasts that nurse impure beasts, Lamashtu does not hide, she invades. Her territory is the darkness between rooms, the nightmares of pregnant women, and the first muffled cry of a newborn. In her presence, dreams decay. It was said she touched the bellies of expectant mothers, and what came next was no longer joy. Empty cradles bore her name, even when no one dared speak it aloud. Her very image was used in amulets, not to worship her, but to remember that she exists, that she watches, that she is never far, and that for many, she is the last thing seen between the curtains of night and the whisper of silence. Brahma Purusha, India. If all the other monsters listed above hide, stalk, or transform, the Brahma Purusha flaunts itself. This being from Indian tradition is the peak of grotesque. A demonic spirit born of ultimate corruption, it wears a body like a costume, a body it helped to empty. When it appears, it carries a skull turned into a goblet from which it drinks something thick, hot, and vital. Around its neck, it displays a necklace made of intestines, not its own, trophies, traces of what once was human, each fragment a memory of its work, and its appetite is endless. It dances, literally. After the feast, it spins and spins, celebrating the chaos it created. This is not a monster that hunts for hunger. It hunts for pleasure. It does not lurk in the dark. It brings the dark with it, and wherever it goes, only fragments remain, and a dance no one should watch until the end. Fochan, Scotland. From the damp, isolated depths of the highlands emerges a creature that seems sculpted by madness. The Fochan has no symmetry, a single eye, a single arm, a single leg, and still, it charges forward. It leaps with fury. Its body is covered in dark feathers or uneven hair, as though its very existence defies nature. But what makes it terrifying isn't just its appearance, it's the effect that appearance has. They say that merely seeing it, locking eyes with that single eye, can cause collapse. The terror is so deep, so beyond reason, that the body reacts with tremors, sometimes with seizures, sometimes with death. It guards paths, trails, hidden valleys, and it never speaks. It only jumps and crushes with its lone arm. Some believe it to be a living curse, others a punishment sent by forces older than time. But no one debates it for long, because few have seen it and lived to tell the tale. Gashadokuro, Japan. If all the yokai of Japan had a king, the Gashadokuro would reign alone, in silence. It is an entity made not of one body, but of many, bones of the forgotten dead, victims of famine, war, or neglect. Hundreds of them, fused together by resentment, they form a giant skeleton over 300 feet tall. Its presence is preceded by a strange sound, a buzzing in the ears, as if the air itself were vibrating. If you hear that at midnight, run. Do not look back, because the Gashadokuro is invisible until the moment it strikes, and when it appears, it's already too late. It grabs people with fingers that once belonged to many hands, and bites with teeth that once chewed mud before chewing flesh. There is no stopping it. It has no soul, no purpose. It is pure hatred of the forgotten. It roams old battlefields, mass graves, ruined cities, and it keeps growing, because every abandoned body is another piece, and the Gashadokuro is never satisfied.